Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompson along with our partner in crime Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm great because Rob Quinn is joining us tonight, and I used to co-host shows with him. It's been forever since I've seen him on the other side of the camera, so I'm super pumped to talk to my guy Rob.
So for anyone who is not aware or did not see, shame on you. There's been some awesome new content coming out on cover1.net. Make sure you're checking it out. And without further ado, our guest host for the show, Mr. Rob Quinn. Rob, welcome. What's going on, man?
Not too much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Glad to be back. So obviously, tonight is our second show in our position preview series, and did cornerbacks last week. Aaron basically just talked about Taron Johnson and Levi Wallace for like an hour.
Choked up a little talking about Levi.
He was good. He was trying to filibuster, and he had to go give some refreshments. Why don't we talk a little bit about the opportunity you had to be able to sit down with Jordan Poyer? And for anyone who didn't read it, please make sure you can check down in the description for the show here. We'll have the post listed. You had a chance to sit down, spend some time talking to Jordan Poyer, and really had a chance to touch on some things even outside of football.
Right, exactly. So Jordan Poyer got 1 year sober on March 13th, and I'm actually in recovery myself, so it was awesome to really talk to him about that. And it was cool to hear like his story and everything. And like he said he's struggled with alcohol throughout his life, and it kind of just came to a boiling point after the Bills and Texans playoff game. So he's made some incredible changes to his life, and it was really cool to talk to him about that and really hear like what he's went through as like a celebrity dealing with something like that.
Yeah, and to that point, I think like I've definitely had my life impacted by addictions of different degrees. I think a lot of people have, and we don't hear about these stories a lot with NFL players because the players themselves just aren't coming into the forefront. They don't want to, hurt their brand or whatever it is that they perceive is going to happen. But you saw the sort of the media's reaction and Twitter's reaction to Jordan Poyer doing this and talking to him and kind of getting a vibe for where he's at now that it's been out in the media and he's been able to have these conversations. Do you get the sense from him and maybe players around the league that this is the kind of thing that will be more embraced because of the reaction that he was able to get from sharing a story like this, and that maybe more people will come out and talk about some of the struggles they also have? Because I agree, I think it helps to hear these stories from celebrities and stuff, but there seems to have been a barrier that keeps people from talking about it. Do you think this story helps?
Absolutely. You see a lot of athletes in the last few years talking about the struggles with mental health and things like anxiety and depression, especially in the last year with the pandemic and everyone kind of being isolated from one another. But we don't really hear a lot about people's struggles with addiction, unfortunately, until it's usually too late and they pass away or things like that. So to hear Jordan be that open and vulnerable about like what he struggled with, and then to see that kind of reception. He talked about Vincent Jackson's passing, and that hit the NFL world and the sports world super hard because he's a guy, the Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowler that everyone knew, and it's like nobody knew that he was struggling with these things. And Jordan just said, like, look, I wish he had someone to talk to. And I think his death was about a month before he opened up about his struggles. And I think it's something that he said, look, like, not a lot of people are coming out and talking about this, but I'm going to do it because I'm better for it. And the people around me are happy for me. And I don't have anything to lose. I was a worse person when I'm using alcohol than I am today. So my story can only help others.
Well, and I thought it was really interesting the way you pointed out both sides of it, that one, a lot of times athletes are put on a pedestal and only seen as this like entity that exists for 3 hours on Sunday, and that they're not seen as people, and that, hey, you have to go buy groceries and change diapers and can have problems. So a lot of times they don't feel like they have any connection to be able to reach out there. But I think the counterpoint to that was really powerful, how you showed that what it can bring to other people when you have people like that share those challenges, and that, even just one other person that feels like, oh man, I didn't really think about that. If he was willing to share that and be vulnerable and to show that, maybe it could help somebody else feel comfortable to seek that out. I thought it was great the way you kind of showed both sides of that coin, of that kind of superhero thing that we see them as, and then realizing that they're just people like the rest of us.
For sure. And that's even what he was saying. He was like, people see me and they see my Instagram and the cars and all the followers and living this great life. But like, we as fans, like you said, we see them 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, or now some primetime games that they're right. Good. But those 3 hours a week is really all we see. And they're making plays and they're the coolest guys on earth. But then they still go home and they have struggles just like the rest of us. And I think for him to be able to open up and talk about it, and as more comfortable he gets with his sobriety and being able to talk to people. I think he did something with kids escaping drugs in Buffalo, and I think his story is gonna help a lot of people, and the people like me that were afraid to reach out and didn't think that there was help, or other people felt the same way, because a lot of people think, oh, like you're homeless under the bridge, and that's the only time, that's the rock bottom that everyone has to hit to get help. But it's not true. And hearing the story like Jordan, it's inspiring, and it should inspire countless other people that might be going through something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's these conversations I think are important. You talked about how, we've seen this sort of shift along celebrities in the NFL, and the conversations of anxiety, depression. And now I do think that this will kick off some of the conversation about drug use. And we talk about, that these guys are just like people too, but if anything, they're probably more prone to some of these anxiety, depression, and tendencies towards drug abuse because of the pressure. I think we all see those big checks and the amount of money they get, and then the Instagram feeds and stuff, but there's so much pressure of being in the NFL and being in the NFL bubble. And we're seeing some of that come up with the use of social media and people expressing their opinions, but having a job that's under total scrutiny all the time. Where does that type of the amount of pressure and that people put them on a pedestal, where does that kind of come into the conversation for these guys when it comes to that pressure becoming overwhelming for them and turning to drugs, or having anxiety, depression about that? At what point do we start to talk about that's unhealthy, having them up on that pedestal?
Right. And that's difficult because, like, given the nature of sports and fandom and everything, that's kind of like what you're going to get. I don't think they're ever not going to be put on that pedestal. But also, like he was saying, like, he was kind of minimizing his own problems from what he saw going to his Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. But talking about he's stressing over his contract and the way he played and things. And like, to us, those might not seem like real issues, but to him in his life, that's his livelihood and his job. It's like any one of us stressing about our job and our paycheck and our pay rate. So if we kind of just balance the playing field and say he's a human being and this is his job and he's having real stressors from it, and I think it's easier to relate than just, oh, he's an NFL player making millions, he can't have any problems. Right. So I think, like, if once we start looking at them as people and human beings, as in addition to being athletes, then it'll be easier for more people to relate.
So I know, obviously, I think the most poignant piece we've touched on, but you guys talked a little bit about his preparations for the season, some of his thoughts on continuity and being able to bring everybody back. What were maybe some of the things that stuck out to you as far as his outlook for coming into this year?
He was super excited, man. He was talking about just being with the team since 2017, and him and Micah Hyde being the first guys brought in under Sean McDermott, and then Tre'Davious White joining the team, and really talking about like the continuity in the secondary, which really is rare in the NFL. We looked it up, and it was the Seattle's Legion of Boom was together for 7 years. And then the Eagles had Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor, and Brian Dawkins for, I think, 6 years, but that was like the mid to late 90s. And that's it. So, like, we're seeing something really unique in the salary cap era of three guys in the secondary kind of coming up together and really enjoying the primes of their careers together in Buffalo. And he's super excited about the season. He said that his off-season training, it's really been like, I know every player says this is the best that they've felt, but he kind of pointed to his sobriety as a reason why he's feeling so good and ready. He said usually he's letting loose in the off-season, whether that's drinking too much and being hungover, but this is his first full off-season, I think, because he stopped last March. So he didn't have the full off-season without drinking, so he's really focused on himself and got ready for the season.
Yeah, and I was actually wanted to tie that in with like what should we expect from a Jordan Poyer having put that behind him, because people can say what they want. And I think he touched on, minimizing some of his own issues with abuse. Like there's for sure another level that we can see him play now that he's gotten that off of his back, whether it's the anxiety and depression that came from that, addiction, or if it was the addiction itself getting in the way of what he was doing for football. So that all that year of training, like we know with stuff like this, when you get over it, it can take a good 6 months for your body,
right,
to get over some of the physical issues that come from an addiction. And so he could have been still playing this last year, going through some of those physical problems that come from an addiction. So, and he still played great. He should have been a Pro Bowler. So, like, where do you think that the ceiling is for Jordan Poyer? Because I thought going into this season, before hearing the story, of what he had to overcome this year, that we've seen the ceiling, and I'm happy with the ceiling, and I think that he's underappreciated. But I uncovering some of this information, what we know about it, I think there's probably a step up for him.
Right. I mean, given what he went through last offseason, combined with not being able to really train with anybody, given the COVID protocols and things like that. Nobody really had a full, regular off season. I know the guys kind of got together on their own, but nothing like really where it was like a regimented off season thing. So I think when you look at that combined with now and how he played last year and now really coming into his own, he's only 30, he just turned 30. So I mean, still in his prime. He's hungry. You can tell that he's a guy that is not pleased with how the AFC Championship game was. And you talked about the guys on the defense not being happy either, saying this is far from over. Like, we're hungry. I think Poyer's in for a huge year, and I think people started to kind of recognize him last year, and he didn't get the Pro Bowl. Yeah. But I think this year his name's already out there going into the season, and I think that people are going to notice when he has a season, whether it's similar or exceeds last season.
One of the big things for me last year was it was finally not just Bills fans referencing him as a snub. Like, right. we know what we have. We know how special he is and that he doesn't get the attention he deserves. I noticed last year a lot of other national writers, a lot of other national names having him as their first name on the list of oh man, how did he not get recognized for it? So it's exciting to see that. Before we get you out of here, what do you got working on next? What are you focusing on to bring to the people?
I'm not too sure yet. We're seeing how the OTAs are going. I'm probably going to pick something out. So if anyone has anything that they'd like to see more about, I'd love to get any input, because I'm always looking for ideas, and a lot of things. I'll get a player's name and then I'll go into a rabbit hole of research and then come out with something. So nothing in particular at the moment, but I'll sure have something by the weekend probably.
How about something on why you guys didn't mention Levi Wallace as part of this continuity of this great defensive backfield for the Buffalo Bills? I mean, he's a year behind those guys, but
choking on here again another week.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So for anybody listening, make sure you're checking out. So excited to have Rob back with the team at cover1.net. You can find him at Rob Quinn, ROBQUINN 619 on Twitter, and RQuinn619 on the Instagram. Find him, find his work all over the place. So excited to have you back, and look forward to see what you do next.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Later, Rob.
Thanks, cousin Rob.
So and we're not exaggerating. Rob is really an outstanding,
he's one of the best in the
mind of what he does, and like you said, he's not joking. He goes down these crazy rabbit holes and comes out with all kinds of crazy stuff on these stories. And make sure you're checking it out. It's really worth the value to be able to check out what he's doing. And when we talk about this position and where it takes us to, it's kind of the toughest one to do a show about. We joked about it pre-show. Like, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde played the most snaps on the entire team. They're two of the most important pieces of the team. They're going to be the starting safeties this year. They're probably the best combined safety tandem in the NFL. I don't know a lot else to say. Like, they're a critical piece of this. We need them as, not exact same as Josh, but pretty close. Like, they're the quarterback of this defense. They are the heart and soul of what we do back there. It's a great problem to have.
Yeah. No, this is the defense thrives because of these safeties, their interchangeability, their just overall ability. They're just both so smooth athletes that aren't afraid to get up there and do the dirty work. They're totally selfless. Like they're everything that Sean McDermott wants, and the defense starts there. I think their ability to come down, disguise coverages, and give you those different looks that allows McDermott to present nightmares. It's why I'm not worried about a Zach Wilson. It's why I'm not worried about Tua for another couple of years. Like these guys allow Sean McDermott to keep a very simple defense in the NFL. Actually, like the zones and the concepts that the Bills are running aren't crazy. It's how they dress them up prior to what you're seeing, and that is because of these safeties. So it all starts up there. The only comment I really have about this group is, knock on wood, that neither one of these guys gets hurt, because as long as they're playing, like there's still some players on the Bills that are good players that you're not sure. When we talk about the linebackers, the floor drops off a little bit more, but these guys' floor, if they stay together and they're healthy, the floor is what you said, argument for the best safety duo in the NFL. Yeah. And if one of them takes a step up this year, it can only go up. Injury is the only concern here. The depth is a big drop off. I'm not sure that they've even recovered from the drop off to Dean Marlowe. We don't know if there's a drop off there. So it's really outside of the starters where the conversation is. I think there's a lot of conversation to be had there, but it's all unknown conversation.
Yeah. So let's start with the new additions. Obviously, we have two new names to the group. We have first our 6th-round pick, Damar Hamlin, coming out of Pitt. Both of us liked him as a value in the draft and able to come in. Also, Tariq Thompson, who is a name out of San Diego State that some people like going into the draft, who is a UDFA. Thompson, more than Hamlin, is a very limited athlete, just some significant limitations. Hamlin, I think, parallels a fair amount of Dean Marlowe. I think that there's a lot there physically, his nose for the ball, his ability to be flexible. What he's not going to have is that 6 years of knowledge in a Sean McDermott defense. So I do think long-term, Damar Hamlin can be a Dean Marlowe type. But what we lost was, thankfully, we haven't had extended periods of time without Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. Neither of them missed more than one game over this 4-year stretch. Right. But when they did, we had someone like Dean Marlowe who could step in for a game, and that it wasn't the end of the world. I can't lie. I don't know that I feel like Jaquan Johnson is that guy. I'm open to a step forward from Jaquan Johnson. Again, I think he's very similar to Tariq Thompson in that I see the nose for the ball. I understand some of the highlight plays that they've made from a turnover standpoint. They're such limited athletes that I just have concern if they get any extended run, they will be the guy who gets targeted and picked on in coverage by the opposing offense. So yeah, I am certainly crossing my fingers that we have 17 games plus playoffs out of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde.
Yeah, when the 17th game was announced, this is the spot that I'm worried about. Like, again, you're not worried if injuries are not a problem, but none of these guys, I don't think, can come in and be athletic enough, or like you said, have what Marlowe had, which was years within the defense. And here's the problem with the lack of safety depth is there's probably like 15 to 20% of snaps that Dean Marlowe would get throughout the season that are sort of up for grabs. And I don't know if that's going to come from, Siran Neal. Maybe it's taking some of those Dean Marlowe
just
snaps.
As a quick reference for it, we talked about the fact that Poyer and Hyde missed almost no snaps or games. Dean Marlowe still played 230 snaps. Yeah, that's not nothing. 230 is a real number.
Yeah, he was in. There's a role that when he left, there's a void for that role right now, and I don't know that it needs to be a safety to play that role. I think Siran Neal could steal that role. I don't know if they're.
I think Eric threw out. Maybe it could be Matt Milano.
Could be Matt Milano for sure, but there's a role there, and that is a role that one of these guys behind Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde would be able to solidify for themselves on this roster. I think Hamlin is probably my bet to be in that race for those guys. I think that he, without having seen him play with other NFL players, but really we haven't seen Jaquan Johnson do a whole lot with other NFL players either. So this is a lot of unknown, but going into it, I would put Hamlin probably as the favorite. I think Jaquan Johnson's probably getting that next, favorite B slot. And then you have Tariq there, probably the dark horse, I would say. Sure. You've heard him making some plays in the OTA stuff, but we've heard that all. But, you need to see it when it matters. But I think Hamlin has the leg up. but God, I don't know that I want to see him in that Marlowe role so early on in his career. I don't know what they're going to do there, but there's some snaps up for grabs.
Yeah, and I think that I'm intrigued by it, and we'll talk about it next week with our we have our defensive line show and our linebacker show coming up. When we get to the linebacker show, I'm intrigued by the idea that Eric threw out there are maybe some of those Dean Marlowe snaps shifting Milano out into coverage and bringing in a Terrell Adams, bringing in a Terrell Dodson. Do they have the nickel coverage ability where, maybe early in the season it's A.J. Klein out of default, but maybe if you have the combination of a Matt Milano and a Terrell Adams, maybe that gives you the athleticism that's similar to a Dean Marlowe. And I could see that being maybe the early season until they feel like they have DeMar Hamlin up to speed the similar way they brought along Matt Milano. He didn't, overtake until like week 11, if I remember right. And Ramon Humber was not the player that we needed on the field, but they didn't feel like Milano was ready. I could see that kind of transition where they cobble it together early and then bring it together later. Sure. The other element that'll come into play here is always special teams. Jaquan Johnson, for as much crap as we give PFF, he did grade out well from a special team standpoint. He made some tackles, was out there, played a lot of snaps, was consistently one of the top end. I think he played the third most snaps, so it was Tyler Medikevich, Saran Neal, Jaquan Johnson. So obviously some of the highest output there. Dean Marlowe was in our top 7, and obviously his snaps are gone, so that's going to be a big question from DeMar Hamlin's ability to step in. That would be the first place he would step in for. Dean Marlowe would be on special teams, maybe not on defense, but that's going to be the difference of who makes this team. And that if somebody's going to push Saran Neal for a spot, somebody's going to push even a Taiwan Jones for a spot, something like that, that would be where it would have to start. But it's going to be testing out, can DeMar Hamlin make his name in special teams first?
Yeah, and that's going to be tough with the lack of athleticism of these good type of guys here at the back end of safety that we talked about, of pushing out a Saran Neal or even a Taiwan Jones. I mean, these are really good special teams players at an NFL level. This is not something that just anyone can come in and do. And I don't know that Hamlin played a ton of special teams at Pitt. I don't want to say special teams ability.
I want to say 0.
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember that coming up as he played defense, and because he was playing defense, he didn't play special teams.
Right.
But he played as a true freshman and played all 4 years and never really played special teams.
Yeah, and there's a transition there. It's not just as easy as
a skill.
Line up people and play. Yeah, at the NFL level it is, right? At high school, they just send out the schmucks to go play special teams too to get some snaps. But at the pro level, like, it's a real job that people are doing here. And Saran Neal's one of the better ones in the NFL at it, and Tyler Manikavich, some of these guys that they're trying to get those snaps from. So it's going to be interesting because I don't know if the athleticism's not there, and that's a concern at safety. It takes quite a bit to be a gunner or steal one of those types of roles in the NFL and take those snaps. So we'll see what they're made of, I think. And I mean, they're going to find a role for Hamlin somewhere on this team. I mean, the investment that they made in him, they're not just going to not have him on this team. It's just going to be a matter of where those numbers fall. Are they going to keep Jaquan Johnson and Hamlin and then try to tuck Tariq onto the practice squad? Like, how are these numbers going to work out? Because here's the biggest thing at this safety position is, we talked about Poyer. Rob mentioned that he's just 30. That's great. And Hyde is too. But really, either one of these guys can hit a cliff here in the next couple of years, and their contracts are going to start to get a little bit scary too. Yeah, bigger investments. I don't know that there's going to be a long-term answer to keeping both Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And you have to hit on one of either these late round guys, or they're going to have to make a substantial investment here in the next 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 years to replace one of those guys sooner than they want. So that's really what I'm watching, is the development of, all of these young guys that they brought in over the last 2 seasons, to see if any of them can step up and be the next Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer, or this late round pick that turns into the next great Buffalo Bills safety. So far, I don't have any faith that they found a person to replace a starting caliber safety. So that's really where my eye is with this group and that's going to be a fun test this summer, because hopefully we don't see any of it during the season. We only get a look at these guys here this summer, and that's our only chance to evaluate.
Well, and I think it's going to be interesting right now, based on the extensions they did last year with Poyer, this year with Hyde. We have them locked up together, age 30 and 31 this year, age 31 and 32 next year. I'm not concerned about either of those 2 years.
Sure.
I think this year, 2021, next year, 2022, obviously health assumed. As long as they stay healthy, I don't think we have any concern with some cliff coming. Lots of safeties play into their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very common thing. I think that whether, and I know Bills Mafia STF there in the comments, I don't know if that means it's a 2022 draft pick or if it's the year after that, but I do think at some point here you probably need more than a 6th rounder. Or you're talking about another investment, since obviously these two came in via free agency.
Right.
That's tougher to do when you start paying Tremaine Edmonds and you start paying Josh Allen and you start paying at that point Ed Oliver and people like that. It's going to be interesting. It would be great if we could hit on a day 2 guy, a 2nd or 3rd round pick that you could have come in for 1 year and then take over the next. I think that kind of layering is something that you could see come into play as early as next season.
Totally. I thought there's a chance you could see it this season. We know
it could have.
Yeah, we know they were looking at guys like Mike Edwards out of Kentucky pretty seriously 2 years. Like, they've been targeting this position. They've had a little bit of ability to sit back and wait that out and see how it feels. I don't see them investing first. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the safety prospects are. I think there are definitely safety prospects worthy of 1st round picks. I'm not going to get into it. I also think running backs are valuable for 1st round picks, so don't get me started on that. But yeah, no, I do think it's a sneaky investment coming up, but I still think that you want to watch the development of the guys that they have here, because they're going to put everything into Taylor over here. I didn't hear the comment from Frazier, but he says, didn't Frazier say Jaquan was waiting in the wings at safety? I don't know if that is an accurate statement to what he said, but I think internally to develop that position, we talked about with the cornerback room, DB's no different. Like, if there's a position that they can develop really raw prospects or maybe guys that aren't as athletic as you'd like at that position, it's somewhere in the defensive backfield. So if there's a position that they can do a homegrown late round development, DB's it for me. So I'm happy to see that. And that's really where I'm monitoring this position group. I hope we don't see a lot of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde this summer. I hope that they give them light reps and most of the summer off, because I do want to see what they have back there and know that if going into the draft next year, if this is something like you said, a day 2, 3rd, 4th round pick that they have to invest at this position for the future, I think we want to know that this summer.
Our man Eric, thank you, man. Appreciate it. You guys see him on Twitter, Buffwagon. Appreciate it. And I will be enjoying a delightful steak dinner this weekend, potentially, with my friend Aaron. And
I don't ever leave my house. Yeah.
Purchased by our friends at the Rock Pile Report, who owe me a white linen steak dinner because of our wager that I had confidence in our playoffs and Brian Dable and our ability to go on a run. So I will enjoy that dinner and some bourbons this weekend at Buffalo Chop House. We'll be supporting a nice high-class local establishment.
There you go.
Tim asked a good question here. I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce his last name, but asked a good question of who is available now. We've been talking about that in some of the shows, and there wasn't a lot at corner, but we talked about the top end at Steven Nelson and Richard Sherman. At safety, there is a little bit.
Sure.
You have Kenny Vaccaro is out there, a name that has some connections here with previous experience. Trey Boston is out there. Malik Hooker went for a workout, I believe, with Pittsburgh the other day. DJ Swearinger's a name that you recognize, but those are the only two that I think would be able to come in and, maybe actually push someone for a roster spot. If Kenny Vaccaro or Trey Boston were the veteran additions, I think you could see a risk of, maybe a DeMar Hamlin or Jaquan Johnson. Maybe only one of them makes the roster. Right now, I think the plan is going to be Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Jaquan Johnson, and DeMar Hamlin, with maybe early in the season Hamlin could be a healthy game day scratch,
sure,
and maybe later in the season he develops. So I don't know that safeties are most likely summer addition here, but if you told me that, the weekend before training camp that Trey Boston got a contract and an invite, I would not be shocked in the least.
Yeah, there's definitely a scenario where it plays out that they're not confident with the drop-off from the starters and they want a vet back there that they can trust. We know that they like to bring in a vet guy. I don't know that – I think bringing in a vet to me would be an issue of one of the health of one of your safeties going into the season, or maybe you're unsure that then you would bring a guy like that in. But I think they're going to roll with a little bit of the youth movement here. I agree with you that I think it's going to be Jaquan Johnson and Damar Hamlin. And yeah, maybe Hamlin doesn't start the year getting reps, or maybe he does carve out enough special teams juice to get those reps, or maybe they have a role for Jaquan Johnson that's like Saran Neal, where you guys are primarily special teams players and you're going to be our aces, going forward. But I think that's the most likely scenario. Is I think that they stay young and cheap too, and keep those guys that are on rookie deals as those additional safeties. And I agree with what Kendall said. I think I like Hamlin as a prospect quite a bit. I think that he can turn into something. When you watch Pitt, it's like watching a Buffalo Bills defense when they're playing quarters. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. He's just got to learn the Bills lingo of how they're trying to communicate that with the players. There's a little lack of athleticism there, but I think with time and understanding the system, you can make up for some of those things at safety and a lack of athleticism. I don't think Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are smooth athletes, but I don't think they're crazy. I think they were pretty average athletes. They weren't doing anything insane. So you see some of that in Hamlin. He's a smooth athlete, but he does have a chance to get burned sometimes. But I think he fits the role of both those guys. When you look at him and look at his RAS card, it looks just like these guys. And I think if there's anyone on this team that can be developed to become that starting safety, and then we can put this conversation of adding a little bit to bed, it would be Hamlin, and that's the best case scenario. And so hopefully that's it. That vet coming in, I think, would take those reps away from these young guys. So I don't want to see a vet come in unless there's an issue where they need to add somebody.
And I'll even say there's a line in that safety group between the Micah Hydes, Jordan Poyers, and Damar Hamlins as athletes, and then the Jaquan Johnsons, Tariq Thompsons, and other guys. And Saran Neal's actually in that top group. He's an elite athlete.
Yeah, he is.
He honestly might be the best athlete of the entire group.
Size, speed, and all.
Yeah, he's just not that good of a defensive player. He's all special teams. Because Damar Hamlin's a legitimate higher-end athlete. He tested out above average in almost everything, and that showed on film. He's a good player. Some of the things, the limitations you have are the same for Jaquan Johnson and Tariq Thompson that I mentioned my comments about being concerned if they're on the field for extended snaps, that's who I'd target. If I'm an offensive coordinator, that's exactly who I'd go after and try to get isolated as much as possible. I think that's one of the reasons that Damar Hamlin has a higher probability of transitioning, is because what we saw in film matches that he is an above average athlete. He is smart. He's around the ball. He's able to make plays on the ball and react quickly, put his foot in the ground and go. That matters. And that obviously Micah Hyde's an incredibly smart player. Jordan Poyer is a courageous player, throwing his body around the way that he does. There's reasons that they're successful in playing this well. And Clavs here was asking, both of them had a couple challenges early. Micah Hyde's been pretty clean his entire career. Jordan Poyer, actually, the reason he bounced from Philadelphia to Cleveland and then didn't get re-signed by Cleveland was because of an injury history, and then he's only missed one game ever with the Bills. So, football is a collision sport. Guys get hurt.
Yeah, when Poyer's
you never
injury,
know.
The freak injury where he lacerated his kidney, I think?
Yeah, something crazy that last year with Cleveland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, obviously you can't guarantee anything, but no, they do not have those repeated soft tissue injuries you see with some guys. But, if Father Time's undefeated, they're both in their 30s, we need to plan accordingly and be ready for things. But thankfully, they've both been very healthy and available.
And if anything, the fan in me comes out that concerns me more, right? When we're talking about this, that it inevitably one of these guys is going to go down and miss some time. It's just the odds are not in your favor as an NFL football player. Eventually you're going to get hurt and miss some time. So the odds that we're going to need somebody to step into this role. And I think that's what's concerning to me at this position, is this juggling act of developing youth versus not having the depth if something was to go wrong at this position. Because like we said at the top of this, the defense really revolves around these two guys. And no matter, maybe Hamlin is ready to get on the field athletically with NFL players and that he's run a similar defense to what the Bills have done before, the Bills are still going to be limited if they go into a game with DeMar Hamlin versus the safeties they have now. Like, there's no question about it. The years of experience together, the communication they have with the rest of the defense, like, they would be super limited, and we don't want to see that.
Where'd the name of Anthony's show come from?
Right.
The reason our other show on this network is called Disguised Coverage is because of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. It's what they allow Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott's defense to do. You never know. Like, obviously, most of the time, Micah Hyde is the center fielder. Most of the time, Jordan Poyer is coming down in the box to be able to be the extra guy. But they can both play anywhere that they need, and they're both exceptional at lining up and showing that the amount of times that you have one of them with their foot on the line of scrimmage, showing all out that they're blitzing, and they have the deep third, and they still get back there to cover their zone, is unbelievable. It blows my mind how often they're able to be, literally just in a flat-out foot race with the wide receiver trying to get back into coverage, but they do that to completely throw off the quarterback that, nope, you don't know. If I come up that far and you assume I'm blitzing, nope, I can still get back into my area, and to be able to do that, it's tough. And J.O. asked a good question here. I don't know that I see anyone obvious in the cornerback room that has a transition over to safety.
I bet Wild Goose could play some safety in a pinch.
Yeah, he's at least
a rangy athlete.
He's the
not
biggest
scared to hit you.
the best athlete out of the group. I don't know that I haven't seen enough of Griffin or McLeod from a UDFA standpoint.
Sure.
Cam Lewis is more competing at nickel.
I think Saran Neal still could be. I know that they've listed him and they had him at safety for a while, and I think he's listed currently as a corner.
Hold on. Different sites list him differently. Let me see what the Buffalo Bills are listing him.
But I don't expect. I think they've given Saran some opportunities to take a job on defense, and he hasn't been able to take those jobs on defense. I think they'd like him develop into that, and he just has not shown it. Although I think he did a lot better job against Kelsey than people maybe want to say. I thought that was an interesting matchup in terms of what we could throw against Kelsey.
I liked the idea of him as a dime linebacker. And that trying to put that big size and athleticism at place. The Bills list Saran Neal as a corner.
Okay.
So, not that means a whole lot on the website there.
Sure.
He is basically a special teams player and doesn't play an awful lot of defense. But, if we're going to take one more stab at it here while he's still kind of on his rookie contract, and honestly, before they decide if they need to re-sign him, because this will be the last year of his rookie deal, it's probably worthwhile to take one last stab at it to see, hey, do we have a future with him here? Can you do anything else besides special teams? Right. And he's good. Like, he's a good special teams player. I like him as a gunner. I don't know that he's elite or like on the borderline of Pro Bowl things or anything like that, but he's good. Like, he does a good job. He doesn't whiff. He doesn't do the way roundabout. He doesn't get a ton of penalties, the things that drive me nuts. But he probably needs to carve out maybe a little something here if he wants to be brought back or to get an extension of a longer term contract, or else they'll just draft another one of him, another rangy, big, strong, athletic athlete who they can train to play special teams and have another extended rookie contract.
Right. Yeah, so I think the moral of the story is Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde got to stay healthy.
Cross your fingers, cross your toes, light a candle.
To be dramatic, man. Like, let's think about it. There's only other position, quarterback. If Josh Allen goes down, we're screwed. Diggs. If Diggs goes down, it's tough sledding. But probably safety's probably even above that. If one of those safeties goes down, like, that's tough sledding, man. There's no easy answer to fill that role.
If you told me you had them second and third on the team of most painful injuries, least the injuries we could least afford to manage after Josh Allen, I wouldn't argue. Like, I wouldn't want to miss Mitch Morris. I wouldn't want to miss Milano or Edmonds. That hurt a little bit last year. Losing Trey.
Dawkins goes down could be...
Yeah, Dawkins, Trey. Those, all the names we read off are the top 6 or 8 guys. If somebody told me they had Poyer and Hyde ranked second and third, I don't know that I'd argue with them. They're right there.
We should make a Twitter poll or something.
I'm sure people will give us strong opinions on it.
Yeah.
But we'll go through. Obviously, this is going to wrap it up here for tonight. Next week, we're going to have our man Kyle Silgi is going to be on talking about his interview with Harrison Phillips. We'll do our defensive line. And then the weekend after that, we will be going through maybe even another guest. We had an interview with Terrell Dotson as well, doing our linebacker preview that'll wrap things up for the defense. Then we're going to take a little break from the players and talk about our coaches and front office and what we have from all the continuity everyone keeps talking about. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we'll get into the offense. So a lot of really fun stuff coming up here, talking our way through each of the teams, what we have available, what's out there. So looking forward to being able to walk all you guys through all this fun goodness that the Bills have put together on this roster.
Yeah, I'm interested to ask Kyle what if he found out any information about Harrison Phillips' diet or workout program. Do you see that, man? I didn't look like there's an ounce of fat on this guy anymore. He just looks jacked. It's crazy what these guys' bodies can do. So that I'm gonna get to the bottom of what he's eating.
Yeah, he is a fit I think he said 312. He's at right now. That is a fit 312-pound man.
He lost all of his rookie baby fat.
Good Lord. And honestly, I won't steal any of the thunder from the article. Make sure you guys read the piece coming up here from Kyle Silgi and all the reasons that there's maybe a glimmer of hope in what we can see in this year for this contract year for Harrison Phillips. So thanks for checking out tonight's position preview with the safeties. Make sure you check out Rob Quinn's piece on Jordan Poyer. You'll see it in the description and the show rundown here, whether you're listening on podcasts or on YouTube. Make sure you check it out. Come on over, check it out at cover1.net. We appreciate everything. Aaron, where can the good people find your works?
You can find me at Aaron Quinn 716, and every Wednesday night here with you, Greg.
That's right. You can find me at Greg Tomset, hanging out with Bills fans in the Cover One Slack channel. Make sure you come and check us out there. Sign up for a premium membership. Well worth it. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn and Greg Tomset, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.